blessing anyhow. You got a name?" "I do." Frank smiled and watched for a change in expression. "Frank Morgan." The wagon master looked like somebody had pulled the plug and drained all the color out of him. He took a deep breath to steady himself. When he finally found his voice, he shouted back to the train, "We got Frank Morgan here paying us a visit." That got everyone's attention. Those in the wagons nearest the two men sat and stared in silence at the West's most famous gunfighter. "I'm not on the prod for anyone," Frank told the other man, hoping to settle his nerves a little. "I'm just drifting, seeing the country." "You planning on riding along with us, Mr. Morgan?" Frank shrugged. "Unless you have an objection." There was something about the wagon boss that didn't fit with his smile. He looked Frank over like he was sizing him up for a fight. His left eyebrow was crooked and white as a sheet. A thin scar ran up through the middle of it, crossed his forehead, and disappeared again under his hat. It made the man look like he was in a state of a perpetual scowl. "You'd be welcome." The man held out a hand. "Steve Wilson." Frank shook the friendship hand, and then fell in beside the other man on point as the wagons began to lumber along behind them again. "Fine-looking wagons," Frank remarked. He began the sizing-up process he did when he met anyone new. Height, weight, skill with a horse, nerve, demeanor, and the small, almost imperceptible things that you didn't see unless you were watching carefully. It was what had kept him alive for so long. This Wilson character seemed mighty preoccupied with something. "Huh?" Wilson finally said. "The wagons," Frank repeated. "With the West building up since the war and the railroads coming in all over, I don't see wagons as much as I used to. These look to be good ones." "Aren't they, though?" Wilson said, snapping out of his stupor. "All of them special built in Indiana for this trip. They've served us well, got us this far without too much trouble." "Where you headed?" "Colorado. In another week or so, we'll turn north some, and then it's on to our new home." "Farmers?" Frank caught Wilson staring at the Colt Peacemaker on his hip. Wilson nodded. "You bet. And we're good farmers, too. It's in our blood. It's just getting too crowded back in Indiana. We all wanted some space where we could stretch out some, build a place to call our own." Frank looked at the man's hands. They were strong hands, but didn't have the calluses he'd expect of a farmer. Wilson had been on the trail a while, though, so Frank dismissed the notion that the man might be lying. "Yeah, I know what you mean," Frank said. "I'm partial to the wide-open spaces myself." "That's a fine-looking horse you're riding, Mr. Morgan. I don't believe I ever seen one quite like it." "Appaloosa, Mr. Wilson. Nez Perce Indians breed them." Wilson shook his head. "Beautiful animal, very striking." They rode on for a few hundred yards without speaking. Only the creak of the wagons and groan of saddle leather broke the silence. As they topped a small rise, Frank pointed to a hollow below them. "Looks like a nice little creek down there, Mr. Wilson. Plenty of firewood, forage for the stock. Good spot for a camp, wouldn't you say?" "Looks good to me, too, Mr. Morgan. I'll ride back and tell the others. Before you do, Mr. Wilson, I'd like to propose a suggestion." "Certainly." The man tensed and seemed to hold his breath at what might be in store. Frank couldn't be certain, but it almost looked like the man was getting ready to draw his gun. "Let's you and me drop this Mr. business before we wear each other out. I'm Frank, and you're Steve. What do you say?" The wagon master relaxed and gave a nervous chuckle. "Sounds good to me, Frank. You got a deal." Wilson spun his horse and trotted back over the ridge to bring up the wagons. "What do you think, dog?" Frank said as the other man rode out of sight. "Am I getting too jumpy? Or is that man hiding something?" A few minutes later, Frank squatted by the creek and watched as Wilson positioned the wagons on a flat in a tight circle. The man appeared to know his business, Frank